Today, I'm going to show you how to replace the fan in a Nintendo Switch Lite. I am going to lay the Switch on a towel just to protect the screen and make it a little bit easier to work on. First, we're going to start by removing the 4 screws on the back. The 4 screws on the back are Y00. Now we can move on to the 2 screws on either side of the USB port and the 2 screws on the top. We're going to switch our bit. That is going to be 00 Phillips. Now that all the screws are removed, we can remove this back plate. To remove the back plate, I'm going to use a pick, but you can use any prying tool. And I start down here at the bottom where the speaker is. And you just want to get in between the 2 pieces. So you'll see right there, I'm going to go right in between there. And there's little plastic tabs in here that you need to separate. So just go a little bit this way, then come back over on this side and do the same thing. Now we can lay it down, maybe try and get a little bit more up on either side. The first time you do this is going to definitely be more difficult than what you saw from me, just because I've done this before on this machine. Once you have the sides up, the next thing you really want to be worried about, you'll see there's a crack already on mine. That piece breaks really easily if you do this incorrectly. So you just want to lift up and try and pry this top piece away. So I like to start over here just because that is so delicate. And you'll see just kind of wedging it very gently allows you to lift off. Okay, there's the back shell removed. Now that that's removed, we can remove this metal plate. This metal plate's going to remain Phillips. You're going to have Phillips for the rest of the screws. And this metal plate has 1, 2, 3, 4 screws. 4 total screws to remove this plate. There's a couple that are in here that do not need to be removed to remove this plate. So let's start with this top corner. Then we got the bottom right. The middle here underneath the fan. And then I wanted to do this one last because this screw is actually different. So keep that in mind when you're putting it back together. This screw is actually a different color. It's like a yellow gold, and it's longer. And that's the one right here. All right, now when we lift off this metal plate, it's going to give you some resistance because there is thermal paste. And I'll show you that in a second. But just kind of wiggle it free. And there's your first spot of thermal paste. And that's on top of the heat pipe. Now that's kind of a thermal putty, so keep that in mind. It's different than the rest of the thermal paste. Now the metal shield has been removed, we can start replacing the fan. This is your fan right here. The first step we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the battery. To disconnect the battery, the connector is right down here. This ribbon cable does need to be disconnected. So there's a little white lock right there that we're going to lift up on. And this ribbon cable just pulls out and gets out of our way, just like that. Now that we have that, I can go ahead and disconnect this battery. All right, the battery is disconnected. Next, I'm going to remove this heat pipe. There are 3 screws. Once those screws are removed, I'm going to grab my pry tool. Just get it underneath here. There's going to be some resistance because there is thermal paste there. Just lightly pry it up. Now I've already removed this, so this tape here is already torn. But for you, if this is your first time, you're going to have to kind of scrape at that tape to get that to pull off. You can see how I left a little bit behind. Now that that heat pipe is removed, we have access to the 3 screws here. And then this is your ribbon cable right here, holding that fan down. So let's start by removing the 3 screws. Once those 3 screws are removed, you'll just be able to lift up. And you'll see the ribbon cable itself kind of bends down. So we're going to go ahead and disconnect that ribbon cable. This has another little plastic lock. Sometimes you can get your fingernail in there. If you can't, you can just use a pry tool. Pop up that lock. And there you go. Fan is out. I'm going to get you a little close up of that ribbon cable if I can. See how it's bent over like that. So there's nothing wrong with this fan, so I'm going to go ahead and put it right back in. But for you, if you have a new fan, you may need to bend this ribbon cable in this similar way. But we're just going to go ahead and slot it back into place and put those 3 screws back in. Now that the 3 screws are back in, we can take this ribbon cable and put that back into place. And you're just going to have to push down on it, kind of bend it back into place. Make sure the lock is up. And be careful, I just got some thermal paste on my hand. But that's it. Then we close the lock. Yep. All right. And our new fan is installed. Well, for me, the same fan, but for you guys, you'll have a new fan. Now that the fan is installed, we can go ahead and put the heat pipe back on. So with the heat pipe, you're just going to slot it in at the top and drop it into place. And then put our screws back in. And there you go, guys. That's how you replace the fan. I'm going to go ahead and throw you to some previous footage of me putting the switch all back together. We're going to reconnect the battery. So first, just push the battery connector back into the connection. And then we're going to put this ribbon cable back in. So just make sure that little white lock is up. And then push the ribbon cable into place. Okay, you'll see it's in place because the gold kind of disappears inside the connector. And then just push the lock down. And now we can put the metal shield back on. And placement's key here. You don't want to get that thermal paste all over the place. All right, let's go ahead and screw this back together. Now going back to that different longer yellow screw, we're going to do that one first. And that goes over here on the left. Then we got 3 more screws. And now we're ready to put the back shell on. So first I'm going to flip this up and get this power button fixed. It just slides in there. There's little plastic tabs on either side that it slides into. So nothing too crazy. All right, so to put the back shell on, we're going to do the reverse. So we're going to start at the top. And again, being very careful of this tiny little spot here. So I'm covering it up. But there's that crack I've already made. You don't want to do that. You don't want to crack your shell. So you're just going to get underneath the triggers while being on top of all these buttons here and kind of sinking in. And it is a little tricky, but if you are patient with it, you should be able to push it right into place. And you'll kind of hear it snap and kind of fit. Okay. Then we're going to check. Once we do that, we're going to go up here and check, because see how I have that gap? So I didn't do it right. And if you can't get, oh, there we go. So I was able to just put a little pressure and get rid of that gap. If not, you want to take it off and put it back on. All right. So now that that gap is closed up for the most part, you can see it squeezes together. Now we can go to the bottom, and you're just going to push. the little friction fit, and we're snapped into place. We'll take a look around. You'll see my side there is not perfect. So we might have to start this over. Or is that going to pull in? No, that'll pull in with the screw in this corner, so I'm not going to worry about it. All right, let's go ahead and put the screws in and make sure everything looks good. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out for you guys. Figure I'm a little tight. So for screws, let's start with the Phillips. And the Phillips are going to be for the top and bottom. The other negative of these screws on the outside, they are not magnetic. So they're a little bit of a pain because you can't just stick them to your screwdriver. Also, be very careful with these tiny screws. See, I keep forgetting they're not magnetic. Be very careful with these tiny screws. They will strip extremely easy. And then you see I've got that little gap there. Just pull it in and then tighten your screw. Should be good. Yeah, there we go. So I still have a little gap up there, which I don't love. So I might end up taking this apart. Or let's see if I can just take my pick and fix that. Yeah, see how there's a big bump there? That's not what we want. Let's see if I can fix it with my pick. If I can't, aha, I was able to fix it with my pick. There we go. If not, you'll have to just take that back plate off and put it back on. Because it wasn't magnetic, I dropped that screw and I can't find it. So we're going to move on and just keep going. Now all we've got left is the 4 on the back. We're going to switch back to our double Y. And again, these are not magnetic as well. So don't lose them. And everything's put back together. So we're just going to take a look around. Make sure all the seams look good. Make sure there's no gaps. And then also, just press on the buttons. I hope this video helped. If you did enjoy it, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.